Okay, so I'm joined today by Ben Mossman, CEO of the Rise Gold Corporation. Thank you for joining me today, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you're joining us today because you reached out after our story last week where we made a little bit of an error. So I'm going to go ahead and read what that quote was. What we said was, the application to reopen the mine states that over 300 jobs will be created, but as most of these jobs are specialized technical jobs, many are likely to be filled from outside the area. Now, that is incorrect. Is that true?
Yeah, that's incorrect. None of the applications say that, and we've never stated that. So the applications that have been put into the county, they require the number of employees and a general breakdown. So 312 employees, broken down generally into different areas to do with mining and processing. And most of that's to analyze the environmental effects. So such as traffic, the employees are creating traffic that's studied in the traffic study. And then the land use study is included in there as well. But in general, we haven't released a lot of details on those 312 jobs, but we will release that mostly out of just public interest over the coming months. But those numbers that have been stated that are, all these workers will come from outside of the county are not correct. They're not from Rise. And the information that is in those studies state that the majority would be local, derived from the existing local population. So.
Okay. So do you have then an idea at this point of what the structure of the workers looks like? Is there?
Yeah. So as far as local jobs, you have 312 employees that work at the mine full time, and those are direct employees. There's also always an indirect, employee jobs that are created from those 300 jobs, which are less definitive. But as far as those 312 employees, you have about 140 that would be trained from scratch by the company to work in mostly the mine, the underground mine, and the process plant. So of those 312, there's 140 that are newly trained. So they would have fairly limited criteria. You probably need a high school diploma, good work ethic, and be willing to go through the training to fill those positions. And then you have about 35 tradesmen. So you have heavy duty mechanics, millwrights, electricians, carpenters, which I would expect there's quite a few tradesmen in the local area that would be interested to work at the mine. And then you have a few administration jobs, accounting, things like that. And then the rest of the jobs are experienced. You have some experienced miners and some experienced people working in the processing plant, which you could consider specialized. But that's the minority of the positions. And there are local people that do have that experience as well. So I would expect that some of those would be filled locally, but at least the majority of those would be from the existing local population, and then some, of course, would be hired from outside the county, depending on the labor market at the time.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, the bulk of the jobs would probably be that are available to people in our county. I mean, it sounds like there's going to be multiple types, but the majority would be of the type that would then be required training, sort of more entry level. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So most of the jobs are in the underground mine or in the processing plant, because you have to, of course, mine the rock from underground, and then you have to process to get the gold out. So the majority of the jobs are in those two departments, and then the majority of those jobs, you can train someone from scratch to do those jobs. They don't require, you don't require to be a tradesman for those particular jobs. Although there are other, tradesmen required to maintain the systems of the mine, such as, electricians and mechanics.
Okay, gotcha. And at this point, do you have some idea of what the pay structure looks like? Are we talking minimum wage, or are we talking something a little bit different than that?
So the average salary for those 312 would be about $100,000 a year.
Okay.
So well over the average wages. I would expect that to be one of the highest paid employers in the county. So in those would range from entry level position would be somewhere around $50,000 a year to a very experienced miner, which might get paid $140,000, $150,000 a year. So, but the average of that's about 100,000. So mining is one of the highest paid industries out there.
Okay, gotcha. I know I've seen some pictures, I think, in the Union of you down here maybe last year visiting the mine and checking everything out. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually live here in the county, so I've been here for 2 years.
Gotcha.
And the company is a U.S. company. I'm from Canada, but the company is a U.S. company, and so and I've been here myself for 2 years. So.
And what specifically is it that you like about this community that drives your connection here?
I mean, we like it a lot. The trails and kind of the outdoors. The kind of rural atmosphere. So a lot less busy than living in a city. So I think that's the main part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm sure then with that connection and that appreciation, you can understand a lot of people's concerns about some of the environmental impacts of this. Specifically, some of the concerns about like acid mine drainage, or some of the, we still have issues from our mines from earlier that haven't been entirely cleaned up. Still, there's still some mercury and problems in some of the areas. I know all the environmental stuff hasn't come back yet, but can you speak to how you're going about trying to address those concerns and make sure that that's not an issue?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, I mean, we spent a lot of time doing the design work to mitigate environmental impacts. So you kind of have a big advantage here because it is an existing mine. So you have historic information from the mining, which was something like 100 years of mining. So it gives you a big advantage. And then in addition to that, you have a company who had the lease on the mine and had been in various stages of permitting since basically 1990, which was Emperor Gold and M Gold. And so they actually got a permit in 1995. Use permit was approved through a full environmental impact report for the watering of the mine. So it's an issue that's being studied a lot. And then as far as say acid rock drainage, so we've done quite a bit of drilling underneath and through the mineralized zones. The materials tested in a lab. We have a lab make up a tailings product. So they take the gold mineralization, take the gold out, and then you end up with the tailings, and that material is also being tested for acid rock drainage. And the thing with the tailings, because the processing uses flotation, you take all the pyrite and the sulfides out, and that product is sold so as a concentrate. So the pyrite and the sulfide minerals that could cause acid rock drainage, they're leaving the county as a saleable product. And then no mercury or cyanide will be required to recover the gold. So there's no use of mercury or cyanide at all. And the pyrite, which could cause acid rock drainage, is leaving the county. And then in addition to that, I mean, these mines around here aren't known for acid rock drainage. I mean, some of the legacy environmental impacts have more to do with trace elements that are in the materials. So for example, the Idaho Maryland mine, the historic tailings site where they put the tailings until the 50s. I mean, we own that site. We're cleaning that up. It's not specifically a part of the mining project. It's part of the cleanup through the DTSC, but we are cleaning that site up. So that we're actually the ones who are going to reclaim that site. We own the land, but of course we didn't put the materials there was put there in 1950s, and that site has been unusable for the last 70 years. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, some of the comparisons people might make to, say, hydraulic mining, which of course everybody knows about in Nevada County. I mean, they're really not that logical. Hydraulic mining was banned, of course, in the 1800s. So it's no surprise or nothing new that hydraulic mining would be a big impact. This is completely different. It's an underground mine using the best design features available, the best available practices. So there's going to be a very, very limited impact, and we put that information out on our news releases, and now the county is doing their environmental impact report, which is in progress and will be out in the fall. But that'll be the final judgment really on what the actual impacts are. And so in our view, there's very, very few impacts, and any impacts that there do occur can be mitigated. And so really it's a lot of positive benefits for very little downside.
Okay. One of the other main concerns that I've heard from a lot of people is both concerns about noise and concerns about traffic, with the mine running 24/7 and having to be taking material in and out, and the different proposed dumping sites perhaps affecting the traffic around here, and then just the machinery from the mine running all the time, and or the trucks running back and forth making a lot of noise. Do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, so the noise, of course, is probably the number one concern for most people that are in that area. So that we designed a lot of the buildings, especially to mitigate noise. So all the machinery is inside insulated buildings. So there are noise insulated buildings. All the machinery is inside of those buildings, and then everything's contained. So, for example, when the rock is hoisted out of the mine, it comes up into the head frame structure. That entire structure is clad and insulated, so that stops the noise from coming out of that building. And then the conveyor that takes the material from the head frame, the process plant, is also in a completely enclosed, covered conveyor. And then the process plant itself is completely contained. And then in the building design, we have airlocks. So at nighttime, when the workers would come in and out of the building, they come in, open one door, come into the building, close the door, and then next door opens into the main plant. So all that's been designed to minimize noise, and the noise study confirms that. So if you look on the southern border of the site, at our border, the noise impacts at night are about 35 decibels. So that's the equivalent of rustling leaves. So it's very, very low noise levels, and because we can do the engineering, we can readily control the noise. And for the traffic, they studied that in the noise study as well. So the routes are very specific. You'll use the Brunswick Road to the highway for trucks incoming, and so for freight coming in, and then for rock and tailings going out. That's from the mine site along Brunswick Road to the highway. That's the first route. And then for about 5 years, while we're building up the Centennial site, you would use Whispering Pines Road, which is so you're up Brunswick Road, down Whispering Pines to Centennial Drive. And that area is a industrial area. I think there's one residential house there, and all the noise impacts are based on that house itself. And so the trucking is done 16 hours a day. And during that time, the existing noise from traffic, because there's always existing noise from traffic, there's no change in the noise levels from adding those trucks. And so the average amount of trucks is 50 trucks per day. You could go up to 100 trucks. And so the only reason that the traffic design or study is 100 trucks is because if there's a weather day, sometimes you'll have snow and that road gets a bit icy 2 or 3 days a year. You wouldn't truck during that time. And so you may need to do 100 trucks that day, zero the first day, 100 trucks the next day to catch up. But the average is 50 trucks per day. And so 50 trucks over 16 hours, most people would never even see that truck. But so it's a fairly limited amount. I guess it sounds like a lot of trucks, but it's really not a lot. And there's that many trucks on that road at the present. Anyways, and then also the traffic analysis considers all those issues to see like what is the effect of having these trucks on the road as far as intersections and the different roadways, and that's all studied as well.
Okay, all right, gotcha. So one other concern I think I'd like to address is I think with the recent in the news of recent explosions and whatnot around, people are a little bit extra concerned about explosives and things being stored, and I'm assuming you're going to have to do some of that. Are you planning to be storing explosives on the site, or is that a concern at all? And what goes into doing?
Yeah, so in design, all the explosive storage is underground, and so the because it's fairly good, it's good access to that site because you have Brunswick Road and the highway. You would buy the explosives from a manufacturer. They would truck them in, and then as soon as those trucks arrive, they would be brought underground through the cage. So it's basically an elevator, and that would be placed underground. And so the advantage of putting it underground, of course, it's very secure. No one can get access to it, and there's very stringent rules, of course, on the storage of explosives. And then if you had them on surface, there's certain distances that they have to be from roads or houses or things like that. So all the explosive storage is underground, and those storages aren't very large for a mine because you do have good access to suppliers. You don't need to stockpile large amounts of explosives. You just need as much as you would need, say, for about a week or so. But it's all stored underground.
Okay. So there's not going to be a huge amount of explosives stored at one time, just enough for about a week, you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. Just because the access is so favorable.
Okay, gotcha. And then what is your sort of long-term plan or long-term commitment to the community? I assume you would want the mine to be here for a sustained period of time, and some of the impacts of the tailings and storage of that is going to take up some space for a long time. So what is your plan for the community and for being a part of this community for the long term?
Yeah, so this mine is a very famous mine. It had a lot of production in it. So I don't think people really realize how productive these mines are and or were. And so they had run basically from the gold rush all the way to 1950s. And the only reason they closed was because, well, first the government ordered them to shut down in World War II to help support the war effort. And then they fixed the price of gold at $35 and then didn't change that until the 1970s. So really, Nevada County made a lot of sacrifices to help win World War II. And that's the reason why these mines are closed. But so we expect that there's going to be a lot more gold below where the mining stopped. And we've done some drilling to show that. And we've actually drilled holes as deep as 6,000 feet below surface. And so the mining has been done on 1,600 foot depth on the Brunswick and 2,000 feet depth on the Idaho. But a mine like this, you could probably mine it to about 10,000 feet before the temperature gets to a level where it's uneconomic to work underground, to cool the air, to work underground, and then you have ground stresses, which increase as you get deeper. So, but if you can kind of think of it that way, it's been mined for around 80 years or so, down to 1,600, 2,000 feet, and this you could potentially mine it down to 10,000 feet, and we don't know for sure if all that gold is there, but that is the kind of long-term potential. And so so the mine permits for 80 years. There's no guarantee it would run for 80 years. That depends on what you find. But of course, the capital cost of putting the mine back into production to reopen the mine is quite a lot of money. So you're talking somewhere in the range between $60 to $100 million. And so to make that kind of investment, you have to run it for a certain amount of time to be able to repay that capital cost. So you'd expect that it would run for at least 10 years before, to make it worthwhile because of the amount of that cost. So it's a very significant investment to build that mine. and so it's obviously a big commitment to Nevada County.
Gotcha.
I don't know what other businesses would be considering that type of investment in Nevada County. Maybe you do.
Gotcha. Well, so I guess where I was getting at with that was that I think a lot of people are concerned about perhaps sort of giving up our resources and then having the company or whatever basically extract our materials that are here, take the capital, and then just disappear somewhere. And we're left maybe dealing with the cleanup, or we're left maybe without these resources that we had, while somebody else made a whole bunch of money and left the community, and it doesn't really come back anyway besides just the people that had the job for that period of time. I'm not saying that that's your plan, but I just think that some people have that concern that might be what's going on. So I was just hoping you might be able to address that.
Right. Well, I guess the first thing is that all the land is privately owned, so the resources belong to Rise Gold. It's not a public resource. It's not public land, and so it's private land. It's the investment, of course, is completely paid by Rise, and so you wouldn't invest that money unless you were prepared to put it in production. It's just too costly to do otherwise. And the markets are very favorable, of course, right now. With the gold price is quite good, and I think the timing would be good. And if things have been different, I think in the 90s when they had Emperor Gold got the permit to water the mine in 95, and they had unfortunate gold markets after that, which they allowed the permit to lapse. It may have been reopened at that time. So there's a timing aspect to these things as well. So now is a good time. I think it's going to continue, and there's a good chance that we can get the mine reopened. And once it's open, that capital cost is paid. The cost to maintain it and keep it operating is much less. So that the big hurdle is to reopen it. It's that that big capital expenditure. And so and as far as reclamation goes, it's a pretty ideal site for mine reclamation because all the tailings and waste rock, they're very clean products. They're basically sand and gravel. They're a marketable product, and we're using them to create new land on our existing sites. So those sites are being reclaimed. They're going to be compacted. It's all usable for industrial buildings. So you're actually getting the materials that are being put there is creating land that other businesses can build, new industrial buildings. And there's a big shortage of industrial land in the county. I think we own something like almost 20% of the M1 zone land in the county, which is a lot. So there's a shortage of land. We're going to, through the mining, actually create land. So you're not creating something that needs to be reclaimed. It's continually being built and is usable at the end of the mine. And then for the buildings, they would stay there except for the buildings that can't be repurposed. So you have 126,000 square feet of industrial buildings on the Brunswick site. The head frames, which have no other purpose than mining, would be taken down, and the covered conveyors would be taken down, but the remainder of those buildings would stay in place. So it's quite a lot. It's quite different than your typical mine where the reclamation liabilities are relatively small because of that continual reclamation, and because those buildings can be reused at the end of the mining rather than having to take them down because there's, it's not like we're, in the desert or in the tundra or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add or say to the community and the people that may be watching?
I think that's the basics. I mean, there's a lot of kind of misinformation that goes out there, rumors, and but there's a lot of money being spent on these designs. We spent $1.3 million just on the technical studies. The county is now doing their environmental impact report, so it's all done by the county. We have to pay for that work, but the county has hired their consultants, and they're going to prepare that environmental impact report. And so a lot of these issues that people are worried about, that is being studied. That's the whole point of an environmental impact report. And so that'll be out in the fall. and it's a very, of course, robust process, and it has there's a few more stages that have public input, and if there's something that can be done better, we're certainly open to considering that. And but I think people are going to be surprised just how limited the impact is from a deep underground mine that we're proposing.
Got it. Okay. Well, perfect. Thank you for taking the time to join me today, and thanks for reaching out and setting the record straight.
Great. Thanks a lot.